Am I the a-hole for showing no sympathy for my brother and my soon-to-be ex-wife after the loss of their baby, and for refusing to let my parents talk to me about it? I'm getting divorced from my wife of a decade. I'll refer to her as my wife in this post for clarity. We have 3 kids together, 2 school-aged and 1 preschool-aged. The last 2 years of our marriage were rough, and I had no idea why. She pretended things were fine when talking to me, but complained about me to her family and friends nonstop. When I told her she could talk to me, she claimed her family and friends were just trying to stir up trouble, and she denied saying I was lazy and ignored her, which was a lot of what I had been told. She said we'd get back to normal once all 3 kids were in school, and we had more time for ourselves. Then I found out she was having an affair with my brother. I found out via his ex-girlfriend, who sent me a photo of them kissing outside my brother's place. He had broken up with her before the affair was revealed, but he had said a lot of things about her, how she was paranoid and didn't trust him, and she turned out to be right. When my wife said she was pregnant, I knew the baby was my brother's, and that there was 0 chance of me being the father. She tried to tell everyone she didn't know, but the 3 of us knew the truth. She knew we hadn't had sex in years. She was using the baby to try and make me more agreeable, but I told her our marriage was over and filed for divorce. She moved in with my brother and tried to take the kids, but I stopped her because he lives 2.5 hours away, and our school-age kids were not going to be able to make a 3-hour drive each way to school. Temporary custody was granted to me, with visitation granted to her. My parents were shocked and angry at my brother when I told them. He tried giving me grief for making them turn against him and her when she was pregnant. I muted him because I didn't want to hear the nonsense, but I also wanted to make sure everything in the divorce and custody process went smoothly. I hope to maintain primary custody, so I'll need to show the kids are better off with me. My parents eventually accepted them as a couple. I said I could understand them not giving up a child and grandchild, but I didn't want to hear about them. They said they respected this. A few weeks ago, my wife had a stillborn baby. She and my brother blamed me for all the stress I put her under. She said being apart from our kids as much as she is was the biggest cause of her miscarriage. She sent a lot of vile texts, and I replied to none of them. He also sent a number of them, which I documented along with hers. My parents came over to tell me about what happened and were shocked that I already knew. They asked what I had said to my brother and wife, and I told them nothing. I said I wasn't going to offer any sympathy to either of them after they betrayed me and ruined my life and my kids' lives. My parents tried to talk about the loss, the baby, and everything surrounding it, but I shut it down and told them I was not going to be their shoulder to cry on or listening ear. I said my wish not to hear anything about my brother or wife had not changed just because they lost a baby. They left my house angry, and it took a couple of weeks for them to reach out again. They asked if I would be so rude to them again, and I said that if they tried to talk about this, then yes. They asked if I had reached out to my brother and wife, and I said no. They told me they had hoped to see me at the service, and I told them it wouldn't happen. They said I didn't need to become such a cold-hearted monster, and that times like these are when you put away the hate. I don't agree, but I'm willing to entertain that maybe I'm wrong. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Definitely not the a-hole. They did you dirty and then expected you to show sympathy? Like, dude, you are my brother and you are sleeping with my wife. WTF? I'm not sure if my brother and wife expected sympathy, but I was supposed to be sunshine and rainbows with them, so there was no stress, and I was meant to give her what she wanted because she was pregnant. My parents expecting me to be there for those 2 is the real crazy part. Because I already knew my wife and brother were entitled, but my parents are disrespecting me too, with that expectation. The stress was caused by their own behavior. They knew they were wrong and tried to normalize things to make themselves feel better. Your parents' conflicted behavior may have been understandable, but that's not a reason to try to pull you into what happened after you removed yourself from the drama. My advice would be to tell your parents they need to see a therapist to understand that making your brother the victim will result in permanent estrangement. I agree. I have been as understanding as I can of my parents and their inner conflict over this because it's son versus son. But to put it on me to be there for the brother who betrayed me and helped destroy the family of my children is something I cannot be as forgiving of. Not the a-hole. It is a very difficult situation. I hope you will get out of it stronger. Maybe when I'm out the other side of this, but it's not going to be easy. This has really messed me up, and I need to be strong and be there for my kids throughout this. Next story. Am I the a-hole? I can't forgive my husband for my labor experience. I, 24 female, have 2 children, 2 female and 9-month-old male, with my husband, 29 male. Labor was a nightmare with our oldest. She was an emergency C-section due to being breech, and she was born at 36 weeks because they couldn't stop my labor from progressing. To make it worse, I did it all alone. My husband and I were both in the military at the time and were stationed 7 hours away from one another. I don't hold this against my husband because I know there was nothing he could have done to be there on time. He arrived about 5 hours after our daughter was born, and I finally wasn't alone anymore. Fast forward 2 years, I was due to have my son, and at 36 weeks on the dot, my water broke while I was at work. My husband complained about having to leave work to take me to the hospital, saying, "Are you sure it's really labor? It's probably just Braxton Hicks. Relax." I told him, "If you don't want to leave work, that's fine. I will drive myself to the hospital. But I'll make sure to let them know you aren't welcome in the room until after the baby is here." He ended up leaving work and driving me to the hospital. But once we got there, labor wasn't progressing. I was stuck at 3 centimeters and my contractions were steadily 10 minutes apart. They sent me home and told me to return once they were 5 minutes or less apart. On the way home, my husband again said, "Are you sure they aren't just Braxton Hicks?" Mind you, this was after the nurses confirmed I was in labor. When we got home, my husband decided he was going to go hunting and told me to let him know if labor got worse. He left me alone, willingly, to care for our 2-year-old while I was laboring. My contractions got down to 5 minutes apart. I texted to let him know, and all he said was, "What do you want me to do about it?" He ended up shooting a deer and had me outside in the cold taking pictures of him with a deer while contracting every 5 minutes. I didn't feel ready to go back to the hospital yet, so I put the 2-year-old to bed and we went to sleep. In the morning, my contractions were still at 5 minutes apart. I took a bath, took a walk, tried eating, and nothing was happening. So I told him we needed to go back to the hospital. By the time we got there, they were between 3 and 4 minutes apart, but all my husband could talk about was the stupid deer and how he was going to get it to the butcher and taxidermist. Once they took me back to the operating room for a repeat C-section, my husband was really supportive. I have underlying health conditions, and he was very attentive, making sure the anesthesiologist knew about everything going on. Unfortunately, my son came out not breathing. He had to be immediately transferred to a NICU at a different hospital. It was one of the most painful experiences I've ever had to go through, and the next day, all I wanted was a milkshake. It sounds silly, I know, but after asking him multiple times, my husband never drove up the road to get me one. Our entire family laughs at the situation and thinks it's such a funny story and that I'll laugh about it someday. But after 9 months, I still feel so dismissed, like he doesn't care about me. It feels like he put his hobby over his laboring wife, and it honestly makes me grateful he wasn't there for the birth of our daughter. I feel such resentment over the whole situation, and I don't know how to move past it. My husband tells me it isn't a big deal, and that I'm overly sensitive every time I bring it up, and our therapist doesn't think it's broken beyond repair, but I honestly just need some outside perspective. Am I the a-hole for not just getting over it and for not forgiving him? How do I move forward from here and begin to forgive the past? Sorry, but this man is awful. He left you while you were in labor? I'm not suggesting he should have just sat there with you, but geez. It would have been nice if he'd at least been in the same house. And yes, actually, I would have expected him to rub your back, bring you food, hold your hand, put on a movie to distract you, and of course take care of his other child. I don't think I could even look at a man who treated me like that. You're underreacting, frankly. Husband definitely sucks. When my daughter-in-law went into labor with her second, we scrapped our planned family day, and all son, daughter, and grandson piled into the house to kind of orbit around and entertain her, or do whatever nesting tasks still needed doing until it was time to go to the hospital. None of us were interested in anything but making her labor easier. It warms my heart knowing there are mother-in-laws like you. My in-laws were in Mexico at the time, but had they been home, I'm sure they would have been there. This is truly awful. I'm sorry your husband is a deadbeat loser and your family is gaslighting you. With 2 young kids and a partner who clearly doesn't give a crap about any of you, leaving will be very difficult, but you deserve so much better. I think it's probably worth it to stay in couples therapy and see if there's anything left there. But if he is still being this dismissive after multiple sessions, I don't know if you can ever get through to him. We haven't talked much about this situation in therapy yet because I wasn't sure if I was overreacting or not. But after the affirmation from this post, I think I'll bring it up in our next session and see how he reacts. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to clean up my fiancé's vomit without his help? Last night, my fiancé vomited in his bathroom. I don't know if it was from drinking, the heat, or a stomach bug, but he missed the toilet. He texted me while I was getting our little one ready for bed, saying he'd vomited and needed help. About 2 hours later, after feeding the dogs and trying to get our 10-month-old to sleep, I went to our bedroom. He immediately told me he vomited and needed me to clean it up. I said I'd help disinfect after he cleaned the chunky part, but it would have to wait until morning because I needed to go back to the baby, who was already screaming again. He didn't respond, and I left. This morning while making his coffee, he asked again if I could clean his bathroom. I asked if he'd done what I requested. He said no and that he wasn't going to. I explained I can't handle the chunky part without gagging, and we went in circles, him telling me to just do it, me saying he needed to help, until he finally said, "You need to figure it out," end of discussion, before going outside with his coffee. 20 minutes later, he came back in, led with "I love you," and asked again. When I still said no, he told me I had to do it and went to his office to work. For context, I've cleaned up his bodily fluids before in the earlier years of our relationship, at least a handful of times, but since being pregnant and having our baby, I've been firm that he cleans up after himself. I'm also a stay-at-home and take care of our child 24/7, even when he's off work. Does cleaning your partner's vomit really fall into those duties? Also, I peeked to see if I was being unreasonable and could just do it. No. Nope. Nope. The sink had hardened, chunky brown vomit. The toilet was covered in the same, but thicker. I didn't even check the wall or floor because I was already gagging. Am I the a-hole for refusing to clean it up? Now for the top comments before reading the mini update. Tell your loser fiancé to clean up his own damn puke. Obviously not the a-hole. Also, why the heck could he not make it into the toilet? And demanding she clean it like she's the maid? This is grounds for leaving. No, just no. Because to him, she is the maid. This man does not see her as his equal partner. He's the breadwinner. She's the baby maker. He's got her right where he wants her. And things will only get worse if she gives in to this demand and if she stays. If he was sick and running a fever, I would absolutely help clean up my husband's vomit. However, if he's well enough to argue, drink coffee, and go to work, he's well enough to clean up his chunks. He clearly doesn't respect you and considers you his maid. Exactly this. If he was truly ill, I would clean it up without question. He's my partner, and I have his back. But if he's well, he should clean it up. I would expect the same from my husband. If I was truly sick, he should and would clean it up. If I was well enough to go to work and drink coffee, I would clean up my own mess and not even think to ask him. I guess my dilemma was just that. What if he's actually sick, overheating, or stomach bug, and it wasn't that he had too many beers? The fact that he told me to do it the next day, while he sipped his coffee leisurely, is what's pointing to not sick, and that he's just treating me like a maid. Mini update. He did not have a stomach bug. He was drunk, and I just didn't notice. Remember, I have a baby and my focus is on her. Vomit has been cleaned up by him. After yet another conversation where I made it clear I wasn't going to do it and how messed up it was that he'd left it for me. This time he didn't argue, he just cleaned it up. Thanks to everyone who commented, even the harsher ones. I know it seemed pretty obvious that it was messed up, but certain dynamics can make you question even the clearest of situations. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my mother-in-law trial parent our newborn? My husband, 33 male, and I, 30 female, just had our first baby 2 weeks ago. My mother-in-law has always been intense. Before the birth, she kept saying she wanted to be really hands-on because she missed out on raising her own kids. Her words, because she worked a lot. Last night, she came over and asked if she could take the baby for a full 24 hours to get a feel for parenting again before we settle into bad habits. I said absolutely not. My baby is barely 2 weeks old, I'm breastfeeding, and we're still figuring things out. She got upset and said I'm gatekeeping motherhood from her and that this is her do-over. My husband told her gently that we're not comfortable, but she cried and told the whole family I'm withholding her grandchild. Now I've got texts from relatives saying I should let her bond while the baby is young or she'll always resent me. Am I the a-hole for saying no to her trial parenting idea? No freaking way. Not the a-hole. You're not gatekeeping motherhood. You're simply parenting your own child. It's unfortunate she worked all the time with hers, but your baby is certainly not her responsibility. Set healthy, firm boundaries now. Make sure your husband is on board and that he is the go-between. If she continues to act like this, then definitely do keep your baby away. She sounds unstable. 100% this. When someone sounds mentally ill and kidnappy, healthy boundaries include making sure they don't have a key, changing locks if they do, never letting them hold the baby unless you are both there to make sure she doesn't walk out with the baby, never letting them babysit, and shutting down any conversation on this topic so they don't feel validated, unless it immediately goes to, please let me help you find a mental health specialist. You may even want to seek counseling yourself if you need support dealing with this level of intrusion. I wish you all the best. Absolutely not the a-hole. My mother did something similar when my daughter was about a year old. Time to bond, make up for things I didn't do before for you, blah blah blah. She ended up kidnapping my daughter, and I had to go track her down in another state. It took me a month to find her. Tell the relatives who are trying to make you feel bad to F off and provide her with their children if they feel that strongly about it. Oh my God, how awful. I can't imagine the pain, anxiety, and horror you went through. I hope she is in jail. Of course not. No charges were filed against her or me.